Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 108. Potential 2021 Devils prospects. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks editor-in-chief, Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter Live, YouTube Live, and Twitch on the Primetime Radio Network. Nick, we've got a special guest tonight, Ryan Wagman of McKeen's Hockey, talking prospects, causing a little controversy. Let's get right to it. What did the Devils do today? They had exit meetings. We should have our own exit meeting.
We would, but we don't take any time off, Sam. We work every single week. We are here every single week giving you quality Devils talk. We went through the pandemic. I'm looking at it. I'm like, oh, what are we going to talk about this entire offseason? I'm thinking, we figured it out for, what was it? 40 weeks? Or 35 weeks? Something ridiculous. So it's going to be a fun offseason. I have a lot of creative ideas that I think that everybody's going to love. Hopefully they come to fruition. But tonight, sometimes when it comes to the guests on the podcast, Sam, it's as simple as I just saw something on the internet. I saw everybody's reaction to it, and I wanted the person who built that thing to get their side of why, they wrote it or they built it or whatever. And that's what's happening today. Ryan Wagman wrote a piece. He wrote a mock draft he writes for McKeen's Hockey, but this was shared on NBC Sports, and it was kind of their official mock draft. And the guy he got the Devils taking caused a lot of controversy. So I'm excited to talk to him and kind of get his thoughts on the draft, get his thoughts on the Devils' future, get his thoughts on their prospects, where they're going to be, because he had a pretty interesting reasoning. So that's going to be fun. But I do want to talk about the exit interviews. We got a couple minutes here. A lot of interesting quotes. Some of the biggest takeaways were obviously the assistant coaches are coming back. I know a lot of people didn't like that, but it was always going to happen. They're not going to they love Elaine Nasruddin. So his impact on the penalty kill, it was Sam, there were 5 teams in the history of the penalty kill, a history of penalty kill statistics, which goes back to the 70s. There was 5 teams worse in history than this penalty kill. 70.9% this Devils penalty kill was, and it was just, they were just giving away chances like nobody's business. And that's the funny thing, is the Devils didn't take a ton of penalties. I think only 3 teams took more penalties or took less penalties than the Devils this season. But the Devils they were letting other teams convert at such a high rate that it didn't matter. They allowed, despite having the 4th lowest penalties minor penalties in the league, they gave up the most high danger goals on the power play in the league. So they were just giving up chances like it was nobody's business, and Blackwood or Wedgwood or Dell were letting them in. So that was something that everybody took out of it. They're bringing back the coaches. Obviously, the power play wasn't much better. It wasn't historically bad, but it was, I think, 4th worst in the league. And honestly, the players talked about it. They said, we got to do better on special teams. So it's not something that's just cognizant to us. It's cognizant to the players on the ice. They know the penalty kill is terrible. They know the power play is not good. They know that changes need to be made. I think that a lot of it had to do with the fact that they didn't have that practice time. Maybe that was they said that the no practice time didn't affect them a ton when it came player to player. But I think when it comes to systems and changing those systems, that's where the no practice time really hurt them. So that became clear. And the other thing that was clear to me, Sam, was that COVID really just messed this team up. This team looked pretty good until Blackwood went on the COVID list. Then it was just a snowball effect from there. And then it was over. You know what I mean? This team just they basically had nothing. And Blackwood said he didn't feel better until 3 or 4 weeks ago. And you remember he got COVID on January 21st or something. That's months. Andreas Janssen said that he hadn't felt better until 2 months after he got the diagnosis. There was just players that were like, I just didn't feel right. And it might explain a couple of their issues going forward. And maybe they could put them behind them. Like Jansson's a player who I'm kind of like, okay, this season, like throw it away. Him and Nico Hischier are the two players like throw this season away. Don't take any hard-pressed opinions on them. And let's see what happens next season. Now, if, like, say Janssen got taken in an expansion draft, I wouldn't be heartbroken. But I don't think he's going to. And I think that the Devils are going to go into next offseason. They're not going to buy him out. They're not going to do anything drastic like that. They're going to give him another shot. And I think that it's going to lead to him playing better. I don't know if he's going to be as good as he was two or 3 years ago with Toronto when he had 20-something goals and 20-something assists on that stacked Toronto team. But if I could get 15 goals out of Andreas Janssen on the bottom six, I'm a happy camper.
Yeah, but I'm not so sure if he's going to be still on the team next year. Do you think he will be? Andreas Janssen?
Going to the I mean, that, like I said, I don't think that Seattle's going to take him in the expansion draft, and they're not going to buy him out. Yeah. They're not going to buy him out. They're not going to waste the money. So I do think he's going to be on the team next year. I think there's too many other good options. I think that Seattle would take a chance on Will Butcher or PK Subban before taking a chance on Janssen, especially since there's going to be a player like Bastian or Kuokkanen. I don't think they expose Kuokkanen, but it's possible. But I think that they're going to expose, they're going to have to expose Bastian. Bastian or McLeod. They're exposing one of them.
Yeah, we were having that long debate because I was not trying to be controversial, but I threw out the idea that some people went nuts on was to because I love that young core group that grew up together, all the forwards. That I hate to see any of them exposed, but they're going to be exposed. But I would rather have Seattle take Severson and just take one for the team kind of thing. And I know that sounds horrible because Severson's a good player, but you can't get away with this expansion draft without giving up someone. I'd rather not give up any of the forwards. I really, because I think they're a year away. And the chemistry that's been developed, Kuokkanen, Sharon Govich, Mikey McLeod, all these guys, again, while, there's an emphasis on defense, but we should get our next guest on. I just want
to get the guest on. I'll continue the conversation. Yeah, no, and it's an interesting thought. And I'm going to write something this week on how PK Subban and Damon Severson are going to work. You have two really good second-line right-handed defensemen, but they're both second-liners, and neither of them really should be on the first line. And it really kind of hamstrings the team. So the Devils are going to go 7-3. Ray Leo just asked me, are the Devils going to go 7-3 for the expansion draft or 8 skaters? There aren't 4 defensemen that you'd want to protect. There's just not. So they're going to go 7-3. Going 8 would just make no sense. They went 8 last time. It was a terrible decision. They got lucky because Vegas went with John Merrill instead of some of the other guys that were on the list. But yeah, it was not a smart decision. Just looking at all the Facebook's rolling tonight. Facebook comments: Michael, hey, are we guaranteed number 3, or can we move up or down to 6? That got explained in the comments there. They could go to 6 with the expansion, with the draft lottery. They could go up to 1 or 2, or they probably 3 is probably almost definitely going to Seattle, so they're probably not going to get 3. John Rooney, any chance the Devils are looking into former Rangers coach David Quinn? I really highly doubt it. I think he's going to go back to college, just kind of reset, or maybe he'll take on an AHL team until another NHL team gives him a shot. I think he's a good coach. But he definitely needed a reset. And I thought John Hines needed a reset. Maybe I was wrong about that. I still don't like John Hines' coaching style. I think he kind of lucked into that Nashville run. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he'll do good in the playoffs. Who knows? I'm interested in what's going to happen with the coaching staff this season. I have this weird inkling that it's not over with everything. But, I don't have actual information on that, so we're going to wait on that. But Sam's back.
Oh, I'm back. I'm also interested in the GM situation because I think it may be extension time for Tom Fitzgerald, isn't it?
He said he's signed through next season. He's signed for the next season, but he hasn't gotten an extension, so it means he doesn't have a GM contract. So yeah, there's some interesting things with that are going to come up.
Absolutely. Well, our next guest is from McKeen's Hockey, Director of Prospect Scouting. That's what we're talking about. His name is Ryan Wagman. You can find him on Twitter at R.A. Wagman. Ryan, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Good evening.
Hey, thanks for coming on, Ryan. And you know why I brought you on? I saw, the cross posts that you did with NBC Sports, the mock draft. I saw you took the goalie with the Devils' first round pick with I think it was third overall. You had them taking Jesper Wallstedt. I believe both Luke Hughes and Brant Clark were on the board at the time, but you had them take the goalie. I have to ask, first of all, does this have to do with Mackenzie Blackwood at all? Is that in your thinking?
It's not completely outside of my thinking. I've been watching Blackwood. So I live in Chicago, but I'm from Ontario, and I've been watching Blackwood pretty closely since the year before his draft year in, I want to say 2014, I believe, off the top of my head. And, he's always been a good goalie. He's always had, his great size. He moves pretty well for his size. But he's never shown that he could be a great goalie. He's never had a full year where he can, steal victories for his team. That's in the OHL, in the AHL, in the NHL. He has the odd good game, of course, but, he's never been a guy that when you put him in there, he's like, yes, we have him in there. We know, we score 3 goals, we're going to win. Mm-hmm. 3 goals, we might win. And so he kind of reminds me of Frederick Anderson of the Leafs. And being a Toronto native, I get to watch him a lot. And he's a guy, he can be a workhorse. He can play a lot of minutes, a lot of games, but he'll play as well as the team in front of him. He's not going to make the team in front of him better. And if you want to build a winner, a playoff contender, I mean, goaltending is weird, and every year we get the odd goalie that comes out of nowhere to do it. And it could be Blackwood. I mean, it's not out of the question, but I'm not banking on it. And you look at the draft, and I always think you take the best talent that you can, knowing what you know. And when we recently released our updated draft rankings, and Banyers was number 1, and Power was number 2, and we had Wallstedt at 4, just behind Hughes. Although the difference between Hughes and Wallstedt in our rankings was very small. Like, we have a kind of a system to put grades on players, and the difference between them was minuscule. And the other reason that I do have a bit of a concern about Hughes right now is a medical issue. He got a skate laceration in his leg that ended his season early. And I have heard rumors that it wasn't a simple cut. It could impact his greatest asset, which is his speed. Now, that could be wrong. I mean, the rumor was not from a medical person. And if that is wrong, and if he is healthy, then I would absolutely consider Luke Hughes in that spot. In fact, I might very easily flip that. But right now, knowing what I know, I have a little bit of hesitation, and I see a place where Wallstedt could be a difference maker. I mean, we have Wallstedt ranked higher than we had, say, Askarov last year, or even Spencer Knight 2 years ago. Our Swedish observers are really, really high in Wallstedt. He's got pretty much everything you look for in a modern goalie, including the size. I mean, size is not as big a deal in other positions these days, but you still want to have a big goalie. He's 6'3", 214 pounds, moves really well. He fights hard for pucks. He sees the puck really well. He's just calm and poised in net. He kind of gives his teams a real sense of, we can win with him in the back there. He's well refined too. He's already playing, with men in Sweden. He's not a long-term prospect like a lot of goalies are, or even like an Askarov who knows when he can come in from Russia. At least when you draft him, you don't have that certainty. And so Wallstead, and I say this saying that Wallstead might not even be the first goalie taken this year. I got to put that out there. Sebastian Cossa from the WHL has just been spectacular. But right now, we still think Wallstead we have him as our higher rank of the two. So,
Okay.
To go back to, is it because of Blackwood? It's partially because of Blackwood, but it's also partially because we think Wallstead is full value at number 3 this year. We don't usually rank goalies this high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you don't see goalies ranked that high because they usually don't get taken that high. So
especially not in the last few years, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, Askarov was probably, when you just break it down, he's probably a top 5 prospect in the draft last year, but like nobody was going to put him there. Nobody was going to mock him in the top 5. Even though like you can argue that the Senators need a goalie and they had 2 picks there, but they weren't taking Askarov there, even though, you can argue he was better than the defenseman than both of them in some ways. So I definitely see where you're coming from there.
I mean, I see the argument. Though last year was a much stronger draft class than this year, and that needs to be said too. Like this year's draft, there are really good players, and Jersey will get a really good one at number 3, whether it's Hughes or Wallstead or somebody else. But this draft class is not on par with last year's.
I do have to ask, just because it's come up so many times. I didn't send you this in the preview, so I apologize. But what is your just quick take on Owen Power? Just because so many people have pointed out issues. It's like he's just being the consensus number 1 because he's 6'3", 200 and something pounds, and he's a defenseman. But I mean, every time I watch him from, I don't have the trained eye like you and some of the other prospect writers. But I look at him, I'm like, I see something good. Are you seeing those same things, or are you seeing maybe some of the issues that some people have pointed out?
So I don't read a lot of other prospect people during the year because I kind of want to. I don't want it to influence my own my own views. And Power is actually quite a bit bigger than you mentioned. He's I'm just double checking now, but he's 6'6".
Oh, wow.
And a big 6'6". Yeah. I've been watching Power for a few years, actually. Power is a fascinating player. He's got the size. He skates really well. He's got really good puck skills. He can be physical. The thing that I see that sometimes concerns me about Power, and again, this is a sometimes thing, is that in college and even before that in the USHL, he could sometimes kind of take it easy. He doesn't always, you don't always see him hustling. And that could actually be just really a factor of he's just so big, he doesn't need to hustle. He'll eat up the ice in 4 steps. He does have a good top speed when he pulls it out. My only question with him is really, at the NHL level, he'll have to go top speed more often than he does in college. And will there be a stamina issue? And that's I can't know that answer. I don't know what he looks like in the gym. An NHL team that drafts him will put him through those paces, and we'll get more comfort in that level. We have Hughes ranked 2nd, although he could go 1st, and it wouldn't surprise me at all, just because he is such a unique player. I guess if there is anybody that he at least somewhat reminds me of, it's probably Ekblad, but bigger, maybe not as mean. Although he can be mean, but it doesn't come as ready for Power as it does for Ekblad. But that's kind of what I lean towards. Like, he's not Brent Burns because Brent Burns is his own thing. He's not Victor Hedman because I'm not comparing anybody to the best defenseman in hockey. But Ekblad's pretty good. And I think Power is going to be very good too. He's just going to, he will have to be treated as a unique player.
Yeah, no, Owen Power is definitely, he's a specimen, definitely. Turning back to the Devils, you mentioned this phrase that kind of stuck out to me, that the Devils can afford to swing for the fences. Now, I'm reading between the lines here, thinking that you think that the Devils could take a chance because you don't expect them to draft this early often from here on out, based on where the prospects are, based on where their core is. Are you saying that you think this team can be competitive sooner rather than later?
I think they can be. I'm not saying they're going to be, competing for the Cup next year, but I think they can be competitive just because they have one of the best prospect classes in the game. Before the season started, we had the Devils system ranked third behind only the Rangers and LA. And Rangers, graduated a bunch of guys from their system. Lafreniere and Keandre Miller, and there's one more that I'm off the top not coming to mind right now. But the Devils really did graduate. I don't know if Grafsoff played enough, but I know I looked at it earlier. There were three guys. Shesterkin we had. Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas the Devils, they graduated Ty Smith and Sharangovich. Although, to be honest, we didn't think Sharangovich would be this good this quick. So
I don't think any of us did.
Losing Ty Smith from our rankings. No, we liked him, but not. I didn't see him being in the NHL this year, and I didn't see him doing what he did in the NHL this year. So good for him. But there's still have a very deep system. You got Holt, you got Mercer, and Holt could play next year possibly. Mercer wouldn't surprise me either. Kokkonen played a lot. Kevin Ball could be ready. Riley Walsh might not be far away. Guys like Tice Thompson, Michael McLeod, even Michael Vukojevic. Like, he was a surprise how good he was in the AHL. So they have a lot of young pieces. They're going to lose somebody to the expansion draft. I haven't really looked to see who are the possibilities. I'm sure you guys have a better handle on that than I do. But they have a lot of young pieces, and they have room to grow. I'm assuming that Fitzgerald will probably look to reinforce the youth with some veterans, at least on short-term deals, just to, there is value in that, even if they're not, maybe not the guys who are going to be there when the Devils might be a division-winning team. They're going to be guys that are going to help the other players develop on the ice. Having an on-ice example, I think, is a valuable thing. So, when I say swing for the fences, what I really mean is that, when you have two picks, especially one that's really, really high, you can take a risk in the sense that, some players have a high floor and a lower ceiling. Some players have a very high ceiling, but maybe a low floor, have bust potential. And when, if I'm in a position where I have 2 first-round picks, I'm not afraid to use one of them on a player who he might not work out, but if he does, he could be a superstar. And if you take somebody, whether you think that could be Wallstedt, and it could be because, goalies do have that inherent risk that position players don't always have. Or if you take a safer, and I say safer with air quotes, but a safer pick at number 3, you could swing for the fences in a later pick, taking somebody who maybe don't make it. But again, if it's somebody who, if he hits, could be a superstar.
And I think that's where we're at. And I kind of want to use that to transition to the next question, because when I look at this Devils team, they really just need a top line defenseman. You brought up Ball and you brought up Walsh, and they seem like they're going to be pretty good players. Kevin Ball got a little bit of an NHL look, and he looked pretty good. He looked like he, belonged at least. But I don't think either of them, unless something crazy happens, I don't think either of them are your 21 minutes a night, top line guy going to run the defense. Ty Smith looks like he can be that guy, but I'd feel a lot better if he were a 1B, on the top line with somebody who's slightly better than him, kind of a situation. I'm looking at Luke Hughes and I'm looking at Brandt Clark. Do you see those two, or either of those? Do you see top of the line upside with them, or are they just this high in the draft because this draft is bad? Or maybe, it could be both, but that's my curiosity. Am I looking at 2 defensive prospects after Power who can run a line, the top line of a team, or am I just looking at what's best in a weak or a less than stellar draft?
It's a very good question. I think Hughes, if he's healthy, if the laceration is going to heal fully and they're satisfied with the medicals, I absolutely think Hughes could be a number 1 defenseman. I don't think he's not like his brother. He's not like Jack. He's not like Quinn. He's more like, if you're going to compare him to anybody, and again, he's kind of his own guy too, but he reminds me more of Jake Sanderson, who played in the program last year and was drafted 5th overall by Ottawa, and has come along really strongly this year as well. He's a great skater. He likes to kind of get involved in the offensive end. He'll charge the net. He moves the puck really, really well. There are still some things he needs to iron out off the puck in the sense, what he's doing in his own zone. But he's also bigger than his brothers. And he's young, he's young for this draft. He's, I think it's a August birthday, if I'm not mistaken. September 9th. So, I mean, if he was a week younger, he wouldn't even be eligible. But, he's got good size. He skates he's just a beautiful skater. Maybe the best skater in this draft class. And he moves the puck well. The injuries, do add some cloud in terms of, what is his true upside, because, we didn't get to see him have a full season. We didn't get to see him in the under 18s. But I don't know that there's anybody eligible in this year's draft class that skates as well as Luke Hughes does. I think he's a smart player. I think he can be a number one. I think he's maybe 3 years from approaching that. He's not as, Quinn Hughes was closer in his draft year. He was already playing in Michigan. Luke Hughes is going to go to Michigan, at least for 1 year, maybe two. I think probably two is probably the smart play. But, to summarize though, yes, if he is healthy, I'm absolutely considering Luke Hughes at number 3. Because he could be a number 1.
And I think you also have the factor that his brother's there. You can kind of play that off of each other. Sam, do you have a question?
No.
Oh, you just want some FaceTime. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want some FaceTime. No, not at all.
So, I do want to talk about
you also
this
asked about Brant
offseason.
Clark, I guess.
Yeah, I did. Sorry.
It's okay. So just to be very brief on Clark, I think his upside is kind of similar to Ty Smith. They have, he's an okay skater, but Ty Smith, the knock-on Smith was always, he's not the fastest, right? He's really smart with the puck. He does really, he just does the right thing all the time. Brant Clark is also he's very offensively driven. I think he's not bad value at third overall in this year's draft class, and he's definitely somebody that I would be, assuming that Power and Benyers are off the board. And for all we know, the Devils could win the lottery, and we're not, it's a totally different discussion. But I think Brant Clark would be somebody they would be considering. Even Simon Edvinsson, the Swedish defenseman, who's also a really interesting player. Big guy, skates like the wind, just does some weird things sometimes that makes you think he's still got a lot to learn. If he was healthy, I might have even considered, Chaz Lucius, who was a teammate of Luke Hughes at the under 18 program and also missed the World under 18s with an injury. And I guess the other guy who would probably fit my consideration set would be Dylan Gunther, a winger from Edmonton, who just puts the puck in the net all the time. But yeah, that's to summarize on Clark, he's not a bad pick. I think there would be a little bit of redundancy with Ty Smith because he has a very similar, in my view, style game.
Yeah, I've seen so many. You had a Gunther at 6. It's funny that you brought up Gunther because I've seen Kent Johnson go to the Devils in certain mock drafts that they kind of fall a little bit lower, like 5 or 6 area. But you think that Gunther is the one who deserves to be in that area?
I do. We have Gunther ranked higher than Johnson. That's not to say that Johnson is a bad pick or, he's not going to be great. He's very skilled. He's got, sublime hands. Some things he can do with the puck at full speed are pretty remarkable. My concern with Johnson though is that he's really slight. He can be overpowered. He tries to do the tricky play a bit too often. And I sometimes wonder, is he just going to be another Tyson Jost, who looked really good in junior college and in college, but when he got to the pros, he couldn't do the same things. And I'm not saying that Johnson won't be able to do the same things. I'm saying I'm not as certain that he'll be able to play the same style of game as a pro that he did in the BCHL and that he has for Michigan. So I have Johnson more in that 10 to 12 range.
Interesting. So final question before we let you go, and I really appreciate you coming on. I'm really excited to kind of look at more of your content as the offseason goes, but I want to talk about the offseason. The Devils offseason started, this week, and they kind of can go a number of different ways. They have a ton of cap space. They don't really have a ton of veterans. They have almost too many young guys now because they're, like you said, there's prospects who are probably ready to graduate to the NHL soon, and they might not have spots because there's other young players in the way, so they'll kind of have to deal with that. What do you think that does for their philosophy going into the offseason? Do you try to get a free agent or two, not in any of the big names, but maybe like couple guys to fill out the veteran style of the roster, so you're not the youngest roster in the league, or maybe they try to make a couple trades to package some of these talented prospects for maybe a star. What do you think they should do, and what do you think their philosophy should be going into this offseason?
I think I would take a blended approach. I mean, I don't know how, I heard you guys talking about, Tom Fitzgerald being, I think he's due for an extension. And so, it depends on how confident he is, secure he is in his job. And that might impact his approach. But assuming he's confident and acting with like a long-term view in mind, I'd be looking at a blended approach. I mean, you're going to get more youth with these 2 first-round picks. Whether the first one is first or second or third, or I don't think it could be lower than 5th or 6th, right? With Seattle.
Yeah, I think 6th is the lowest with this new rules with only the top 2 lottery.
Yeah, it's going to be a high pick, and the second pick will still be I think it's around 20. It's going to be a good pick too. So they're going to get some youth, and some of the other young guys will have played more and will be more ready to take on bigger roles. Whether it's you're going to see more from Ty Smith, more from is there more from Sharangovich? We'll find out. But Jesper Bratt is still 22. Pavel Zacha, he had his best season ever. I think a lot of people, myself included, are ready to give up on him, and he did. He was fine. Michael McLeod is now an NHLer. The defense needs work, but that's not something you're going to develop through the draft. That's something you need. You're not getting somebody that's going to step into the NHL right away unless you're drafting Owen Power, and even then, there's going to be hiccups. So, I can definitely see them trying to add some defensemen on a short-term deal, whether it's via trade or as a free agent. I haven't really looked at the free agent class that much yet, so, I don't know what the actual options are. It's hard to predict trades because, you need 2 to tango on a trade. So, it depends who is offering what. There will definitely be teams that are looking to make, move and shake before the expansion draft to protect something. Are the Devils in a position to help a team out for something extra? That's a possibility. So, if I'm New Jersey, I continue to build for the future, keep the cupboard full with prospects while also making sure that there are reliable and good veteran players who can kind of supplement the roster. And I don't know whether it's, showing it as an example is maybe not the right way to look at it, but to kind of take some of that slack from the young players so that, there's not too much pressure. And, you have more young players who lose their ability to develop because they're being rushed too quickly than you have guys who are, held back a little bit and given more time, whether it's another year in junior or the AHL or in a lower lineup role. So, if I'm Tom Fitzgerald, I'm thinking of, trying to burn the candle at both ends, basically.
Ryan Wagman, make sure you follow him, RAWAGMAN on Twitter. You got lots of beer content on top of the hockey content, so you're right up my alley. I've hit the follow button. Make sure that I get all the content that you're putting out before the draft and after the draft. Do you have any good pieces coming out? Do you have anything you want to plug?
This year has been a strange year. We will have our draft guide out in the next, we usually have it out a couple of weeks before the draft. And so that I forget the exact date, it's around mid-July. So we should have that coming out in early July. People who subscribe to our website, I don't know the price off the top of my head, but see if I can find it quickly. Join McKeen's today. It's $16.50 $16.50 Canadian for 3 months, and that gets you access to any booklets that we come out with, including our draft guide. So now would be a perfect time to subscribe. That'll get you not just the draft guide, but also we'll be putting out a lot of scouting reports on draft eligible players. This time of year, usually they come out earlier in the year, but because this has been a strange year, we're kind of doing things a little bit backwards just because of, we have to do a lot more video watching. Will Scouch is putting out a lot of his video reports, which have been very popular. But that's basically where we are right now. We're going to have a draft guide and a lot of scouting reports. And it's a great time to subscribe. And for a full year, it's at least Canadian. It's $57 for a full year membership, and that'll also get you our annual guidebook, our World Juniors coverage, things like that. A little bit of summaries on the World Under-18s usually. Next year should be a lot more too, because we'll have a lot more ability to get into the rink.
Oh yeah, and I'm excited for that. I personally haven't been able to go to a game this year, so it's, we had a lot of plans, but the plans, like everybody else's, the plans got kind of upended, and $57 Canadian. That's I don't know what this whole gas pipeline thing has done to that, but that should be like $30 American. So I don't think that's the actual conversion rate.
It's around there, I think, $30-$35 American for a full year.
Yeah. And to get this kind of, McKeen's has been around for a while. It gives you the high quality coverage. You get the rankings, you get the updates, you get Ryan's coverage. So make sure you go subscribe to McKeen's Hockey. And they're charging you Canadian, so you get a deal. We love a deal here, Ryan, and I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for giving us some of your knowledge, and have a great night. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Take care, guys.
That is Ryan Wagman, McKeen's Hockey. I want to pay in Doge to help.
You're paying Doge?
Yeah, I want to help McKeen's Hockey out by paying in Doge because after I make that transfer, they're going to the moon.
The moon. Let's go to the moon with Jesper Wallstedt or Luke Hughes. And that's the thing. If he got a medical on Luke Hughes that he didn't like right before you write, and like I had to write a lot of these things too, where I'm like, I'll get information from something, and I'm like, if this is true, I need to severely change my opinion on this. But I don't know if it's true. But I might write it, and then somebody might look at it 3 days later when we find out it is true, and then that changes the entire opinion. But I'm not going to delete it. You know what I mean? So I understand that plight that he's dealing with, where it's like, I got a medical. It wasn't from a doctor. I don't like what I heard from the medical. That really impacts how he's going to grow as a skater. And if skating is Luke Hughes' best asset, and you think that something happened that's going to impact that skating, I understand why he would, be like, well, that's a little volatile. They already have Ty Smith, and Brant Clark is too much like Ty Smith, and this medical on Luke Hughes is very worrisome. It's like they got this player here who's, and obviously a lot of people had those conversations around Askarov last year with the 7th overall pick. Last year's draft was a lot better. Alexander Holtz would probably be third of the prospects this year, I think. He's just that good compared to what, he's probably beyond Bernier's in power. And guys like Rossi would be in the same spot. And guys like, Jack Quinn would still be pretty far down. Buffalo still made a terrible mistake. But, we like to rag on Buffalo here because they're one of the two teams that finished the season worse than us. So, but let's pivot, Sam. Season ended. It ended with a whimper too. Those are two stinkers at the end of the year.
Yeah, they were stinkers, but it just kind of summed up the 2021 NHL season for the New Jersey Devils. I mean, let's move on. What's done is done. Part of me, I don't believe in tanking. I just think this team was that bad this season, and there's a lot. And I didn't want to have fool's gold where they would rip off 10 wins straight to end the season. I want to see some real progress. And again, going back to, before we had our guest on, that you're going to have to give up somebody in the expansion draft. You definitely. Yeah. Now, what is Ron Francis going to do? It depends which coach they're going to pick. I think it's going to be Rob.
I really think it's Gallant. I think it's going to be Gallant.
I think it's going to be Brindamore. But no matter what, they're going to have to pick somebody. And who do you want? Which core group? And going back to what I was saying before, that I just think this forwards group needs to. They were drafted together. They were, the chemistry is there. It's developing. I just don't want to disturb that. Do you put both PK and Severson out there along with Butcher? Have them take their pick.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds crazy because I would hate to lose Severson.
They're not
to be
gonna.
honest.
They're not gonna expose Severson. They're not.
Okay,
They're gonna expose. So here's why. They have to protect. The only way that they would expose Severson is if they went with 8 skaters and they protected 8 forwards. But that means you're exposing Severson on top of Subban, on top of Butcher, on top of, Siegenthaler. You're exposing, so you can lose Siegenthaler, which you just gave up a 3rd-round pick for. You can lose Severson, who's, very good when everything's right. I agree that everything's not always right. And there's issues there with that. But, when everything's right, there's defensemen that aren't good even when everything's right. So there's a lot there.
When is his contract going to be up, Severson? When's his contract up?
I think he has one more year after this one.
Okay, one more year, right? And is he a UFA or is he an RFA?
Yeah, he's a UFA.
UFA. Ooh.
I'm sorry.
Think about that.
He's not a free agent until 2023.
All right. Well, never mind.
And he's got a really good contract, $4.16 million a year. It's a really good contract for a second line defenseman. It's not a bad contract. It's not a.
But what do you think his contract going to be after? Do you see him on the team 3-5 years from now? That's a good question.
So it'll be 29.
I see Kevin Ball. I see Ty Smith. I don't see PK Subban. 3 to 5 years from now. Do you see Damon Severson 3 to 5 years from now?
Let's take the 5-year plan. Let's see. Do I see Damon Severson 5 years from now? So let's say you get an ideal world where everything kind of works out right. That means that the Devils have developed this year's 1st-round pick. Let's assume it's a defenseman. Ty Smith, Kevin Ball, Riley Walsh, Vukajevic, and
Ohoyak?
I can't.
Yeah.
That,
Call him the O guy. Call him the O guy.
Nikita O. They all develop exactly how you want them to develop. So that's your 6. Great. But
plus this year's draft. You never know.
Why? That's 6. That would be the 6. It's this year's draft: Ty Smith, Kevin Ball, Riley Walsh, Vukajevic, and Ohoytuk. I'm just going to say it differently every time, I guess. I'm going to talk. I got to talk to Rob Lapolis soon and ask him how do I say that name. But excuse me. I don't think their styles aren't going to fit into a 6. When I look at it, their style just doesn't fit into a 6. I don't know who plays with who. It just doesn't seem to gel as a 6. So I think you do need one veteran in there. And you also want a veteran defenseman.
Ryan
Murray?
They're
going to... No. I think he's gone. Unfortunately, because I like him. But the Devils would want to sign him to like a 1-year extension. And somebody's going to give him like a 3-year extension because what's his name got a 3-year extension? The guy went to the Ducks. Shattenkirk. Shattenkirk got a 3-year extension. Or a 3-year contract, excuse me. So I think that Murray's going to get a 2 or 3-year contract somewhere. I don't think the Devils are going to want to give him that. So I think he's going to go somewhere. But when it comes to the right side, their big issue is that you don't have a number 1. You have 2 number 2s. So I think the Devils are going to end up picking between Subban and Severson. If they re-sign Subban after this season, which is possible. I know a lot of people don't like Subban. I like Subban. I like him besides that $9 million contract. So if he agrees to 4, I would be happy. And if you're signing Subban to 4, you're signing him to be your second line right-handed defenseman, which automatically puts Severson in that number 1 role, and that's not where he should be. He should be the number 2 too. So it's kind of a weird situation. And Sam, this all might get fixed by Seattle taking Subban. Because if Seattle takes Subban, then you're going to resign Severson because you got to have somebody on that right side to play second line for a while.
I would be happy if Subban was gone. I just don't. I'm not sure if they would do that. I don't know. What is Ron Francis thinking?
So I was surprised at what George McPhee did with the Devils in the last expansion draft, where he took Merrill. And Merrill has grown to be a pretty good defenseman. He's not bad as far as like the defensive defensemen go, but I don't remember any Devils fan being that upset when they took Merrill. There's a couple other guys exposed that you were like, oh, I thought they would take, these forwards. But they really focused on defense. They really wanted to make sure they got the right guys on the blue line, and they took a lot of chances on guys, and it worked out. Look at them now. They're a very good team. But I think that the same thing's gonna happen. We're going to sweat it out over Bastian, McLeod, and these young, Kuokkanen possibly. I really don't think they're going to expose him. But Merkley is somebody who they're going to have to expose. These are the people who are on the chopping block, and they're going to expose these defensemen that are going to be too intriguing for Seattle when they look at the whole spectrum. A lot of people are going to be protecting defensemen, and there's going to be guys that they just can't get. I'm sure they're going to try to go after like a Vince Dunn in St. Louis. There might be some weird ones, like maybe Erik Karlsson gets exposed in San Jose. Maybe Keith Yandel gets exposed in Florida. You remember, we forget about this from the beginning of the season, but Florida almost basically like ruined Yandel's Iron Man streak by just sitting him because they didn't want to play him. That we're not that far removed from this. So yeah, there's some intriguing defensemen, but I think when you look at young defensemen who have a chance, like Will Butcher's an intriguing guy, and he just doesn't fit in the Lindy Ruff system. He's got kind of his feet aren't. He's not fast enough. Just straight up, he can be a good defenseman in the right system. The John Hines system seemed to fit him until they miscast him. He's not a defensive defenseman. I don't know what they were doing with that, but once he had a good role, he was very serviceable. He just isn't that in this system, and Lindy Ruff isn't going anywhere. So I think that he would be an intriguing guy for them because he's still young and he has a lot of NHL experience. He's a former Hobey Baker winner. He was a college star. He was really good his rookie season. That's something that might intrigue them. Or like you said, they might want the star in Subban. They might want to put the rocket on Subban's back, hope he has something left. They might sign him or they might take him in the expansion draft and then re-sign him. That's a possibility too. So there's Ray Leo says McPhee did us a favor. He kind of did because we were having this weird logjam on defense that they really needed to fix, especially after they got Mirko Mueller. So it didn't end up working out, obviously, but McPhee kind of did do us a favor. And maybe Ron Francis will do us a favor too. There's a lot of things that could happen. We just have no idea what their thought process is. We have to see who the other teams protect before we can make those decisions, because there was a lot of look what Florida did. Florida made a terrible decision, gave them Marshall and Riley Smith, which really filled 2 top 6 forward positions for them with one team. You know what I mean? So it was there's going to be weird, GMs are going to make mistakes, and Seattle is going to be able to take advantage of those mistakes, and that's going to change how they go about the rest of their draft. So it's hard to tell. It's fun to talk about, but it's hard to tell who exactly is going to be those guys that are exposed. But with the rest of the offseason, obviously that's a very large part of the offseason because we only get an expansion draft once every, generation usually. We got 2 this generation, but we're not going to get another one.
It's once in every owner needs $25 million in cash.
Yeah, basically. But anyway, free agency is a thing. I'm going to go through free agency soon, but I want to kind of look back at the season first because I feel like it was just so on fire. I didn't really get a chance to kind of really take in this season, so I want to look back, kind of talk about that. That's what I'm going to be writing about for the next couple of weeks. Not weeks. I'll we'll get into it. We'll talk about hockey. We'll talk about what's going on the ice, what's going on, with the playoff teams, and all that. So I think that they're going to be quiet in free agency because I just look at the free agents, and outside of Dougie Hamilton, none of them really make sense for the Devils. And Dougie Hamilton's also that's a risk because you're going to pay him $9 to $10 million. So I don't know if Fitzgerald is really wading into those waters in the year after a pandemic. But maybe all that money that Josh Harris saved up from not buying the Mets, maybe he'll go crazy in free agency. Who knows? I think trade route.
Actually, he bought AOL and Yahoo.
Did he really?
Yeah. Apollo Global Management. Yeah, they did.
Oh, did they? I honestly should know that.
They're getting into the content business, so to speak. I mean,
so timeout. They bought. Never mind. I was going to say something mean, but I
told you. We're a hedge fund. We're an asset. That's what we are.
I mean, when was the last time that Yahoo and AOL were an asset?
Well, they buy distressed assets. That's what they do. If you remember our first press conference with Harrison Blitzer, it's, yes, we buy distressed assets. We make sure that it's financially viable. We're not financially viable yet. I think that was what he said, but we will be.
I remember that.
Yeah.
So, before we go, Ray Leo did ask, do the Devils look at the restricted free agent market, being that it's pretty solid? Obviously, everybody's looking at Cale Makar. It would be stupendous to sign Cale Makar. There's no money in the world that Colorado's not going to match, and if it is the kind of money that Colorado's not going to match, it's going to cost us 4 first-round picks.
Yeah, well, you gotta hand it to Colorado though, because they did get screwed in a couple drafts where they could have been like having the first overall and they fell down. But you know what? They're looking pretty good.
Did they get screwed though? Did they get screwed? Because one of those was when they got Makar.
Positioning.
Another one.
I'm talking about positioning.
I know, but it worked out in their favor.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. And even when this lottery draft, because I'm preparing myself mentally to get screwed again, like last year when, the guy had the remote control looking directly at the ball machine, and as the Ranger ping pong ball was being dropped, it was kind of like obvious. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen again, but it's what Ray Shero said when we got Jack Hughes. It's like everyone's telling us to tank, but had we not won that game, the last game of the season against Carolina, we would have never been in position. The way it all works, we would have never been in position to get Jack Hughes. Yeah. So it's really a luck of the draw. It's just Mr. NHL, Gary Bettman, just work on the optics. It just didn't look good last draft lottery. When the ball accidentally falls in quicker than the rest. Yeah. And it's like guys.
That draft lottery was some that was some Patrick Ewing stuff, but it is what it is.
Yeah. We're almost to the end here, but since everybody's doing exit interviews, I know Kreider was not happy. I think the Rangers and all that. Could I give you an exit interview?
Sure.
Give you a pat on the back. It'll be nice. I'll be nice.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice pats. I like pats.
Yeah. Well, what did we accomplish in the last 14, 15 months? We went through a pandemic together.
We did.
We restarted the Devils in 9.5 months of no hockey. We somehow survived that. Then suddenly it stopped for 16 days. And then they got restarted, and then we watched them struggle to get back in order. we were there, Nick, with our fans watching us reading out their comments on YouTube Live. YouTube Live has grown bounds where there are times that YouTube Live has more people than Facebook Live. The podcast has grown. I would have to say, I have to look back at the numbers, maybe over 100,000 downloads between the period of the first stoppage, the pause, NHL pause in March of 2020 till now. So, you know, we live in the virtual world, and countless of people private messaging us. We make mistakes here on the podcast, but we're just Devils fans here, you know, trying to make something cool. Anyway, so I'm giving you a pat on the back because it's not I mean, we could have easily mailed it in.
Yeah, we
14, 15 months ago. I'm seeing the complaints of myself and Beer Baron on YouTube Live. Loving it. Complain some more, you Devils fans. I know we suck, but you know what? What are you going to do about it?
Let the hate breed. Let the hate breed. And it's fun. Yeah. This season was hard. I'm not going to lie to you. Yeah. This season, after going 9.5 months without hockey, getting excited for everything to go wrong like it did. And, you know, we're still going through this pandemic. So it's like, you know, we're, you know, dealing with our own stuff and then having to do that, not the podcast, but like just the hockey season, having to deal with a team that's literally depressing, you know. And I told you, I was like, I don't know who to ask to be a guest right now because, you know, besides the beat reporters who, you know, we had on a couple weeks ago, it's like, well, I mean, there's, you know, what do I talk about? Why do we suck? Because you suck. Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
Thanks for coming on, John Johnson. You know, we'll have you on again.
Yeah.
So yeah. So, you know, that's the end of that.
I gave you a great exit interview. We should have a podcast called Exit Interview. And start criticizing it. And start criticizing everybody. Tom Wilson, hey, bad move, but you destroyed the Rangers franchise in 5 days. Thank you.
How fun. Yeah, that's all I got. Player grades are out on pucksandpitchforks.com. There's 2 separate articles. One's for the forwards, one's for the defensemen and goalies. Go check that out. I wrote an article today just on the reaction to the exit interviews today. But yeah, it's been a fun season, Sam, on the podcast. It wasn't very fun watching those games. That wasn't fun, but talking to you every week.
I'll tell you what, if you can survive 9.5 months without Devils hockey and talk Devils hockey and then watch all these games and do 56 game streak, a streak of post games, and most of them not so good, we can accomplish anything.
We got it. We've been doing it. And props to you for doing all those post games because some of them I had to go to bed afterwards because it was so disgusting. But no, I appreciate you. And
likewise,
Pucks and Pitchforks, pucksandpitchforks.com. We'll have content, you know, as often as we can. This next week's going to be wonky, but I'm still going to get you some content and make sure, let's go Devils on to next season.
Yes. On the next season, maybe I'll write something. Anyway.
You should. You better.
Till next time, let's go Devils. See you later, folks.